Hey everyone, I just wanted to check in with you at the end of Unit 1. Many of you are already well into the reading tweets for Unit 2, and that is great. I'll be trying to interact with you there on Twitter as we continue throughout the rest of the week. So do remember that the reading and the reading tweets are all due by this coming Sunday. In each unit from each unit starting with Unit 2 through Unit 7, I should say. We will have readings and reading tweets for the first week of the unit, and then in the second week, you'll complete your reading worksheets, and your discussions, and your journals. So if you have any questions about the class schedule, please let me know. Unit 1 was a bit different in that everything was just due at the end rather than at different dates throughout the 2-week unit. So please do make note of that. I have scored all of your initial tweets for Unit 1. If you don't have a score, you got a 0, that may just mean that I haven't seen you yet on Twitter. Sometimes when you first create a Twitter account, it doesn't post your work to the course hashtag. I think that's part of Twitter's way of trying to avoid spam accounts from posting too many things, too many places. So if you just mention me in a tweet, my handle is at CNMBrandon, or if you email me your Twitter handle, I'll be sure to give you credit for the work that you've done. I also just finished reading through the discussion board about defining Latin America. Most of you did an excellent job of asking open-ended types of questions that brought in ideas from both the Chasteen and Gobat reading. And you asked questions that got at important issues and left room for very insightful responses. Many of you also did an excellent job of not only citing both of the readings in your responses, but of adding commentary and explaining why the ideas that you brought in from those sources were important and how they helped you to answer the question that you were responding to. So we're off to an excellent start there. In terms of defining Latin America, something that I wanted to mention was my use of a term on the discussion board. So as I replied to some of you, both on the discussion board and in the grading feedback, I used the term norteamericano. Norteamericano is a term used in Latin America to describe Americans, citizens of the United States. So they don't call us Americanos, they call us Norteamericanos. For a variety of reasons, many of which you could probably get a good sense of from the Gobat reading, Latin Americans are very apprehensive about the United States' influence over the hemisphere, the kinds of activities that the U.S. has performed in Latin American countries, and that's just sort of putting it very neutrally and lightly. As we'll see over the next few weeks and couple of months, the United States has had a very heavy hand in Latin America. In the 19th century, the 20th century, that included not only economic heavy-handedness and dominance, but also actual military occupation of Latin American nations. So going back then to the term that I was talking about, the idea that we call ourselves Americans is something that many Latin Americans kind of take offense to, because the entire hemisphere is America, and we've appropriated the term just for us. So many of the things, the ways that they identify are also saying, we're also Americanos, as Chasteen writes about in chapters 4 and 5, as we read about independence and the early post-independence years, so the period from about 1810 to 1850 or 1860. The notion of being an Americano was something that helped pull Latin American people together within their own nations and also help them to give that identity that Gobat was talking about as members of a region that was working to define itself in oftentimes in opposition to U.S. imperialism. Thinking of other ways of defining Latin America, just kind of on your own, consider whether or not the Caribbean is part of Latin America. Some scholars would say yes, others would say no. Why might that be the case? Why aren't Caribbean islands? Cuba almost always falls in Latin America, no matter who you're talking to. but places like the Dominican Republic, Jamaica, Haiti, and other islands in the West Indies and the Antilles, not necessarily counted as Latin America by some scholars and other observers. So think about whether or not you would include those islands in your definition of Latin America as we move forward this semester. Thanks for all your hard work in Unit 1 and all the work that you're already putting forth in Unit 2. Please ask questions whenever you have them, as always.